everyone. Nice to have you all. I think most people are calling from the States, and so thank you for having us for your lunch break, potentially, as this is lunchtime, I think, in New York. My name is Aline, and I'm the co-founder of NaTakallam. And we'll be having a conversation with Cindy and Ghaith. And Ghaith is actually part of the NaTakallam team, and he teaches Arabic and does translation from Arabic to English as well through NaTakallam. So my background is I am actually Lebanese, born and raised in New York, and I did most of my work in human rights and journalism. And as a result of what I'd seen in Lebanon and seeing kind of the situation with the Syrian conflict that triggered the worst refugee crisis of our time, with about a million and a half Syrians coming to Lebanon where they don't have a right to work. At the same time, myself, I speak French and English, but Arabic has always been my weaker language. So I've been a lifelong student of Arabic, and when I was in New York, I was watching the situation in Lebanon, and I was very concerned with the Syrian population that was effectively barred from a future and from hope, being stuck in this limbo status with actually less than 1% chance of being resettled to countries in Europe or in the Americas where they are actually given a right to work and restart their lives. And at the same time, I was trying to find ways to practice Arabic from New York. And I realized that while the last large refugee crisis was in an era where there was no internet, today we live in the era of the freelance economy and the connected refugee. And so while Syrians in Lebanon really for the most cannot work locally, they can actually work in the internet. And so that's how I came up with an idea to connect with Syrians over Skype so that they could become my language partners. And Ghaith will tell you a bit about his experience doing that. So NaTakallam has grown into a social enterprise that today provides one-on-one language classes delivered by refugees in 4 different languages. So Arabic, in a variety of dialects. Then we also have Spanish taught by Venezuelan and Central American refugees, Persian taught by Iranian and Afghan refugees, as well as French taught by Francophone African refugees. We also have curated programs in schools and universities, as well as in community and office settings. Those can be around language, but also around teaching and raising awareness around the migration crisis and what it means to be displaced. And NaTakallam also delivers translation services by refugees. So yeah, I think without further ado, I'll pass it on to Cindy, and we'll continue the conversation from there.
Thank you, Aline, for your. It's okay. Thank you, Aline, for your remarks. I'm going to say a few words. Hello, everyone. My name is Nathalie Bastin, and I am a program director at the French American Foundation. For those of you joining us for the first time today, the French American Foundation webinar series is an opportunity to engage our broader community in dialogue surrounding questions of mutual interest for both sides of the Atlantic. Today, we are delighted to partner with NaTakallam for this special webinar on the impact of COVID-19 and migration. We are pleased to welcome Ghaith Halak as speaker to share his experiences in Syria and Italy, and Cindy Carcamo to moderate the discussion from her unique background as a journalist. This afternoon, I have the pleasure of introducing Cindy, who will follow with an introduction of Ghaith. Cindy is a journalist and covers immigration issues for the Los Angeles Times. Previously, she was Arizona chief and national correspondent for the Times, focusing on borders and immigration issues in the Southwest. Cindy is also a 2013 Young Leader of the French American Foundation and a recipient of the French American Foundation 2012 Immigration Journalism Award. Without further ado, I will pass it over to you, Cindy. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful that we're going to be discussing immigration and COVID-19. It's a huge issue. So I'd like to begin just a few things that we should keep in mind during this webinar. First off, for a long time, migrants have been among the most vulnerable in our society. And really, COVID-19 has brought to light these disparities. During this pandemic, migrants face huge hardships. They're disproportionately impacted by the virus. They're on the front lines at grocery stores, healthcare facilities, daycare centers, and more. And often don't have a safety net if they lose their jobs or they fall ill with the virus. But I think also at the same time, we have to keep in mind that migrants are resilient. They know how to hustle. Actually, I think we could learn a lot from the migrant population. They're entrepreneurs. Their ingenuity during these difficult times have amazed me. I've spoken with people who are, for instance, owners of quinceañera shops and have pivoted and are making face masks now. So that leads me to Halak, to introduce him. And really, he has an incredible story. He's in his 30s, originally from Hama, Syria. And due to the conflict, he now lives in Padua in Italy, where he studies political science and international relations. In his free time, he likes to talk politics and play chess, and he's part of NaTakallam, sorry. And so without much further ado, I'd like to go ahead and have him tell you more about his experience.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you, Aline. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you all. My name is Ghaith Hallak. As Cindy told you, I'm from Syria, from the province of Hama, from a city called Salamia in the center of Syria. I live today in Italy. I study political science, and I'm a part of NaTakallam family for more than 5 years, or about 5 years now. Since the beginning of this job. I used to work as a journalist a couple of years ago, and I have experience as an Arabic teacher in person and online as well, doing one-to-one Arabic sessions through NaTakallam. I do some translation jobs as well. I work as a guest speaker with the same project, of course, talking to universities, schools, explaining the Syrian situation, and at the same time teaching Arabic. Going back in the history to my story, I left Syria in 2013 because of the war. I was doing my military service when the war started in Syria, which is something you have to do, like all young people in Syria. But because of the conflict, because of the war, they didn't release me, they didn't finish my service. They asked me to serve more than I should. And because of that, and after a long story, after I got in siege, after I got injured, after I found myself in a place where I'm serving or against all of my beliefs, against my doctrine, against all of my education, I decided to escape or as they say, to desert from the army. So after my injury, actually, I got an injury because of some shrapnels. They entered my head in 2013. So they sent me to my house for recovering as a recovery period. And I used this recovery period to plan my trip to Lebanon. I paid some smugglers to enter Lebanon. And I arrived in Lebanon in 2013, in the middle of 2013. In the beginning, I thought everything will be okay now. I'm away from the war. There is no risk. There is no blood anymore. But I faced another problem, that I'm undocumented refugee in Lebanon, which was a very serious problem to me, because of that, I was not able to find a job. I was not able to have a job permission in that time. So I started in 2013 trying to first to improve my English, and then to attend some courses, online courses, and to find some job that I can do it online. I worked as a freelance translator in the beginning. Then I started writing some article reports or opinion article to some Western websites and journals, Arabic websites as well. And But it was a kind of unstable job to me, because as a freelance, you know, you don't find the stability in your life, especially in the country like Lebanon or in a city like Beirut, where the life is very expensive there. In 2015, I heard about this project, NaTakallam. It was a project. Today, it's an amazing foundation. I joined them seriously in the beginning. It was a strange idea to teach online now. But day by day, we improved our performance, we improved ourselves. Now we work with more, don't know how many thousands, Aline can correct to me now. From my experience, I worked with more than 120 students in these 5 years, actually, either in like one-to-one or group sessions. They were from more than 16 nationalities, actually. And at the same time, I continue my study in Italy, and I'm now in my 3rd year studying political science, international relations. What I'm going to tell, or to, if we talk about COVID-19 and the impact of this, of the virus on us as refugees, I think the same for all people. But as a refugee now, many people, because of that, they find kind of delay to get their documents here. They're waiting the asylum process to get their document, to get their commission, the decision of the asylum from the government. Thousands of people waiting today, so they only depend on the aids or like some donations to survive today here, especially in the neighboring country, for example, of Syria, like in Lebanon, in Turkey, in Jordan, same in Europe, in some countries. So working online for me was kind of I survived because of this, actually, because the thing that people face today, I faced it in Lebanon more than 4 years ago. Finding a job at home was the real solution to me, because I can do it without any fear of getting arrested because I have no document, or like the checkpoint stop me, or face any legal problems in Lebanon. I know it's not good to be, as they call us, illegal refugee, but it was not our decision finally. We were forced to be in this situation. We didn't decide this. So we have to deal with this reality. And during the last period, or before COVID-19 spread in the world, when I was telling someone that I'm working online and for about 4 years or 5 years, it was a strange idea or something. It's like difficult to believe that I'm depending on an online job for 5 years. Honestly, I found some difficulties to convince people that yes, it works. Even if it's online, it works. Working online is not a strange thing anymore. I survived because of that. I pay my university fees every year because of this job. I pay to for the rent, for the bills, for everything in my life. And then COVID-19 came, and I discovered that my normal life was called quarantine or lockdown, because that was my normal life, actually. So I was doing this for 5 years, teaching online, meeting people, meeting new people from many countries. So it was not, or it's not a strange idea anymore today. People have to deal with this as a reality today, as working online. It's not something, or an alternative job. I will not call it as an alternative job, like as it is for many people today. I think it's a real solution. It's a good solution for many people, especially for those who don't have the job permit as refugees or as migrants. Some people, I know some people here, or some refugees wait sometimes for 2 or 3 years to get their documents here, especially those people who arrive by the sea, taking boats to arrive in Europe, and because they come without visas, they wait sometimes for 3 years to get their documents. In these 3 years, they have no job permit because they don't have a document, actually. So working online could be a solution for them, especially if they have the abilities. And that's another point. When we talk about refugees, we have this maybe wrong idea or misconception about refugees, that they are these people who live in tents or in a camp, who just eat and drink and sleep, have nothing to do. But this is not true. There are professors. We're professors in Syria. They are refugees today. We have doctors, engineers, translators, teachers, drivers, workers, they have the skill, they have the ability, they have the education. You just have to believe in them, that they can do something, and to put them on the right way in their new life to do. And this is exactly what NaTakallam did with me. I always say this. When we find someone who trusts you, trusts that even if you are a refugee, you have something to do, or to present, or you have to prove yourself, we don't need anything more as a refugee. We just need the opportunity to prove our abilities, and to prove that we can be producers in this community like all people here. So again, it was not our decisions to be refugees, or to be refugees. Talking about myself, coming back to Lebanon in these 3 years, I started in NaTakallam. I had just 3 students in that period. I remember, and maybe that's funny, my first salary in NaTakallam was $70, yeah, just for a whole month here. But it was, as I told you, it was a new thing, trying to, and beside the humanitarian idea, or the humanitarian base, that you have to be a refugee to work with NaTakallam. So it's kind of offering or providing opportunities to refugees to work in this foundation. So, but yeah, in my first month was $70, but a year later, I reached $1,500 in a month. Actually, in that summer, I remember that crazy summer when I was spending 6 or 7 hours in a day with my students here. Some of them were living in Beirut. I started meeting them face to face, not only online, actually, and giving them some sessions throughout NaTakallam, of course. So as I told you, it's not something difficult to, maybe it's strange to believe, but it happens. It's a reality today, and it's something real. We have to believe that working online could be a solution for many people who are in a specific situation, or in specific conditions, or who are kept from finding a job for some reasons out of their controls. So when I was in Lebanon, I was able to leave without any problem. Of course, honestly, my situation in Lebanon as a job was very good, but I was just trying to arrive in Europe, or to travel to another country, just because I have no document, and that's an endless problem in Lebanon if you stay in Lebanon. So I just was trying to travel, and day by day until Italy accepted my file, and they gave me a political asylum here in Italy. And yeah, now I'm continuing my job in NaTakallam I can say without any hesitate that for 5 years now, I'm totally depending on working online as a person, as a man. I do nothing else. I just work online. I can live without any problem. I can live, I can save money sometimes, of course. I pay totally to my university just from working online. So COVID-19 could be an example for this. People now, a lot of people lost their jobs. Maybe teachers, maybe, I don't know, like, or some kind of this, or like office job. They lost their job, but they can do it at home. So the idea of working online is not that impossible thing to apply or to implement, but you have just to believe in yourself, and to believe that you can do it.
Would it be possible for me to interrupt for just for a minute? And that's awesome. Sure. That's great that you've been able to work online. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about refugees there in Italy, and whether, we talked about this yesterday, whether they're on the front lines of COVID. I mean, are they in healthcare? Are they, at grocery stores, packing up groceries? I mean, maybe you could tell me a little bit. Obviously, the internet is wonderful, and it's great that you've been able to make a good living off of, telecommuting sort of thing. But I'm wondering if you could, obviously that's not the case for everyone. And so I'm wondering if you could talk about the situation there on the ground in Italy, what refugees are doing, and how are they a part of, in regards to responding to COVID-19?
Yeah, thank you. Of course, like a platform like NaTakallam is not able to help millions and millions of refugees in this world, to hire all of these refugees. So it could be a solution for a part of them. But the situation today, for example, in Italy, it's a long problem. Many people arrive by the sea here from Africa, from North Africa, from many African countries. They arrive in the south of Italy, and then they find themselves forced to live in camps, just like without any. I don't like this term, like illegal refugees or undocumented refugees, but this is how they call them here, because refugee is a refugee. It's a humanitarian issue. It's not like we don't have to label people in this way, but this is how they call them. So these kind of people wait sometimes before COVID-19. They were waiting for a year or 2 years sometimes to have the opportunity to attend a commission that they decide, listen to their story and decide if they deserve the asylum or not. Yeah. So now with COVID, it's too late, more than in the past now. So for these people, they find themselves just living in camps. It's kind of prison sometimes. Yeah. Like you have to sleep in a specific time. You cannot leave the camp after 10 o'clock, for example. You have to wake in this time. So it's kind of like military life or jail life for them. Yeah. Of course, if they have any health issue or health problem, yeah, they receive treatment or aids from the government. Like not because they have the health insurance. No, it's like just from a humanitarian aspect here from the government. They don't leave them in this way. But absolutely, people who arrive legally here or they have the visa and they get their decision as they have the status of refugee. Of course, their situation is better here. I will not say that working online is perfect for these people, because sometimes you find 6 or 7 living in a room in this camp, in the same room. So it's not always doable actually, but I believe that if we find 3 or 4 or 5 platforms like NaTakallam do the same thing, we'll find a solution for many people of these people. So if I want to compare between them or between the Italian, it's the same issue today for them. Many Italians lost their jobs actually because of COVID-19. It's the same idea, but the difference is that if you lose your job because of COVID-19, the government here, like there is kind of compensation from the government here. They pay you because you were employed, but there is no pocket money for these refugees.
Okay.
If they are without jobs, so they just.
Even if you have a visa, you're a refugee, but you have a visa, there's no safety net for you? Or
no, in my case, like the asylum system here in Italy, if I arrived with a visa here in Italy, so but the government doesn't pay you for forever here. So they were responsible about me for about 1.5 years. For families, if there is kids, they are responsible of them for about 2.5 years here. But you have to find a job, you have to continue alone, which I did actually. And I didn't wait for 1.5 years actually. After 1 year and 1 month, I left because I found myself able to continue independently. So I asked to finish my contract with the organization that was helping me here, and I continued. I depended on myself.
Sure, but let's say if you were to lose your job, I'm not saying, I hope we don't, that hasn't happened, but someone in your legal status were to lose their job due to COVID-19, is there a safety net? Would you be able to access some kind of government program or no?
Well, I declared my salary here from like what I received from NaTakallam. I declare and I pay taxes here. But but at the same time, they don't deal with me as an employee here. They call it like independent job here.
Right.
But I have to declare every year what I received from NaTakallam to pay, and they count how many euros I have to pay as tax. So in this case, like if I have a contract here in Italy and I lost my job, the government pay me for every month I don't work. But in my situation, because I'm not employed in Italy, my contract is not in Italy. So the government, even if I pay taxes, they might give me like let's imagine I lost my job in NaTakallam for a reason, just an imagination here. Right. But I was paying my taxes, I was paying everything. My health insurance will continue here, and maybe I will receive a kind of help for the rent of the house, but I will not receive a monthly salary like others who have contracted.
Got it.
So that's
Thank you
the
for
difference.
explaining that.
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining that. And I just want to remind our attendees that, please feel free to ask a question. We want this to be kind of a fluid dialogue, and we want to make you part of, the discussion. So, and so actually, someone just asked, how does the impact of COVID-19 differ between the US and Italy, whether on the lived experience of refugees and or on the policy level? And I don't know if you want to take that, Ghaith, a little bit about.
I think it's the same. I explained now. It's
Yeah.
it's not that difference. As I told you, it's up to your situation if you have document or not, or if you. It's up to the way you arrive here. If it's up to the kind of job you work, and but absolutely, when it's something related to the health or when you have a health issue, they will not leave you alone. Absolutely, in Italy or in Europe in general.
Yeah, and that might be the difference with the U.S.
I'm not expert in this.
Right. Yeah, no, of course, and that's where I can weigh in a little bit, where you don't have healthcare in the U.S. And so you have a lot of people who are. I mean, I've written about this. People who are on the front lines who are, janitorial staff, and they're cleaning, hospitals with COVID-19 patients, and they're having to decide whether, okay, am I going to go to work and expose myself, or do I stay home and lose my job and I have no safety net whatsoever? And this is in particular to people who are in the country without legal status, so they don't have authorization to be in the country, which we have a great deal of people who are in that situation, about 11 million, according to studies. So, I mean, it really depends on what your legal status is. And in addition to that as well, I mean, there are people who have and I'm talking about the U.S. experience, people who have temporary protections, who have gotten a stay of removal, for instance, from the U.S. government. And then all of a sudden they're going in for their check-in and they're told that they are not going to be extended and they're facing deportation. And these are people who are essential workers. Really it runs the gamut. But it seems to me that in places like Italy, more of a safety net for people who do have legal status just because of the social structure.
Well, they don't send someone forcibly to his country. Even if they reject your asylum application, you have the right to complain or to ask again, or to hire a lawyer to follow this to follow your case or to follow your file here. You can try 1, 2, 3. You can try till 3 times actually here. So
there is an appeals process, right?
Yes, yeah, you can.
Yeah, and it's similar here too. There is an appeals process, but it depends on whether you have a good attorney and whether you even know there's an appeals process as well.
I think in Europe, the most important thing is to pay your taxes in Europe. If they want you that you pay your taxes, you have a job, it doesn't matter what kind of job. Like I know many people who work online in different places, in different companies, but they don't declare their income actually every year, just to avoid paying the taxes here. But I was able to do this actually. Like in my first year, I didn't, honestly, because I was new here and I was not stable here. But then I decided to do this because in the future, if I want to ask for the citizenship here in Italy after 5 years, I can. That will help me if I'm a man who pay taxes, who help in this community in a way. So it could be like an advantage to me here if I want to get the citizenship in the future. I thought in this way, just like that.
Yeah, and it's the same here in the U.S. too. You have to show that you've been paying taxes. Even if you're in the country without legal status, the IRS will give you a number where you can pay your taxes. So it's kind of interesting because even though, and I'm talking about people who are in the country without legal status, in this, they will give you, the government will give you a number, even though they know you're here without legal status, they will give you a number so you can pay your taxes.
Actually, I got this number before my ID card in Italy, before my asylum.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
interesting.
it was the same thing they gave me here. Like, the first thing they gave me in Italy.
Huh. Yeah. And we have another question. Can Ghaith tell us a little bit about his experience in the Syrian army and how he got to Lebanon and his life as a refugee there in Lebanon compared to your life in Italy?
For sure. Well, as I told you, I joined the army in 2010 because in Syria, when you are 18, you have to join the army. You can postpone this if you study in the university. You can postpone, which I did. I was studying computer information systems in Syria. But when you reach 25 years old, you can't postpone anymore. You have to join to do your service there. So when I was 25, I joined the army in 2010. Months before the revolution, actually. In the first period, my service was like kind of quiet, normal, because I was studying computer systems. They put me in a messaging center, like just receiving faxes or sending telegrams, you know, in the army, receiving the message. That was my job. It was in an office on a PC. But then after the beginning of the revolution and when the situation started become more complicated, they started sending the soldiers to serve in some checkpoints as in a protection like mission to some important units, and this is what they did. So they sent me to a chemical unit close to Damascus, belonged to the army. It's like was chemical factory. They produce something there here and. Kind of chemical weapons, I guess, because it was not allowed to us to go inside the factory. Our mission was just to protect the unit. So we were surrounding the unit there. So that happened in 2012. They sent me there. Before that, I had like kind of like disbelief of what I'm doing there since the first year of the revolution, because I was following the news. I was watching how people were killed in the streets, sometimes from the army, often the police forces and the security forces. And at the same time, I got kind of internal conflict because my brothers and my dad were in the protestations, in the demonstrations against the regime in the first year. They were in the streets asking for democracy, for the freedom, for equality, for these things. And two of my brothers were arrested there, and because of that, and then later my dad, and I was serving in the army, so it was like I'm serving the man who arresting my family. It was like this. I was thinking in this way. So this is why I started to think to leave this place, but I was waiting for the chance. When they sent me to that point close to Damascus, there was an extremist group. They besieged our unit for about 2 months. There in the spring of 2013, and it was a very horrible period to me actually, because of that siege we were not able to, like, the food is over, the medicine is over, everything, we find nothing. We started eating tree leaves sometimes or some grass in a period because we found nothing more. We were in a siege. They were surrounding us from 4 directions. So, and at the same time, they were targeting us from bombs or Molotov or something like that. And one day, because of a bomb, many shrapnels entered my head, and I got injured in that day. And I was in a coma actually for about, I don't know how many hours, I don't remember exactly. But when I woke up, I found myself in a treatment room and with many people injured and with a pain in my head and some shrapnels. Until today, there are 6 shrapnels inside my head until today. And because doctor advised me that I should not try to remove them, they are stable, so forget them. You don't have to try with them. They became like a part of my bones here. And they just cause a problem when I travel in the airport on the metal detecting. I caused some noise there, which is embarrassing sometimes, but I asked for a doctor report to prove my situation in the airport when there is a noise on the metal detecting device there. So after they broke the siege and they took me to a hospital, to a military hospital, and doctors, they did kind of surgery in my head, but not that dangerous surgery. They took the rest of the shrapnels, but as I told you, these 6, they advised me to forget them. And they're still in my head. And then they gave me about 2 months to recover here. And after these 2 months, I have to, it was less than 2 months actually, but I renewed them later because I was planning to leave. I just was waiting for the good chance or the good opportunity to leave. I was thinking how I can do. The only way to Lebanon was the illegal way, because as a soldier, I cannot pass the cross border between Lebanon and the legal one. Between Lebanon and Syria, they will stop me as a soldier. I'm not able to pass the border. So I just paid some smugglers to give me a donkey, on a donkey for about 2 hours in the mountains between Syria and Lebanon. Alone, without any guide, because donkey know his way very well. Donkey is a smart animal, by the way. It's not stupid like people say. So 2 hours on a donkey between the mountains until I reached the Lebanese border, where there was a car waiting for me exactly in the same point. So, and when I went down, the donkey turned around and went back to Syria, like he knows exactly his mission. So that was the way how I arrived in Lebanon. My brother was waiting for me in Lebanon because he was there before me, my elder brother, who was arrested, as I told you, in the first year of the revolution. And then when he released, to avoid another problem, he traveled to Lebanon. He was waiting for me. And then, as I told you, I was trying to spend most of my time at home, because of I don't have any document in Lebanon. Even if I want to sometimes to buy something from the supermarket, I have to check the way if there is any police in the. So it was like kind of living in hide for 3 years actually in Lebanon, totally in hide. I just was going out for important reasons here, or leave my neighborhood there. And I was arrested in Lebanon for about a week or 8 days because of that. One day there was a checkpoint. They stopped me in the street. They asked me for a document. I don't have any document, so they stopped me. They sent me to a police station and then to the General Security Center, where there was an investigation with me. And then luckily, my brother was able to reach some Lebanese friend who helped me to go out from the jail. And but the Lebanese authorities gave me 2 options, like to go back to Syria or to leave Lebanon to another country, because I have no legal entrance, let's say, in Lebanon. But both options were impossible to me in that time, because if I will go back to Syria, they will deal with me as a traitor who left the army, and it means death in Syria. And at the same time, I have no way to another country from Lebanon. So I just continued living in hide and trying emailing some embassies and some organizations until a friend of mine, he was reporting about NaTakallam, by the way. He is a journalist, American journalist, was in Beirut. He met me, he was reporting about NaTakallam. And when he knew my story, he put me in touch with the Humanitarian Corridor organization, who was helping the refugees in Lebanon. And they put me in touch with the Italian embassy. And after they heard my story, they gave me the visa to Italy. Wow. And finally I got documents here and everything is okay. So that's quickly. If I want to talk about every single detail, finish until tomorrow. So that's
I know. But one thing I did want to ask you is, it seems like you went. It's interesting because in Lebanon, it seemed like you said, it's like you were in hiding, right? You rarely went outside your house unless it was for things that you needed. And it's kind of interesting because I'm wondering, now being in Italy and living during this pandemic with COVID-19, some people would say that they are kind of also trying not to go out for, they will only go out for things that they really need. But so there are similarities, but I'm just wondering, for you, being in Lebanon, was it is it easier to be in Italy during the pandemic than it was in Lebanon?
No way to compare, actually, because at least I know that there is a government will not leave me alone here in Italy, which is something I missed in Lebanon. No one was helping me in Lebanon. So that's, I think, the main and the big difference between here and there. And I know that I am here trying to avoid going out for a reason, for my health and for the others' health here. But in Lebanon, I was forced to do this just because of the fear, because I was living in fear in Lebanon.
So you feel like you have more freedom in Italy.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, and that's what I was trying to get at. Okay, and then also, someone had asked if if you've seen a change in the number of people who are studying languages online since the COVID crisis began.
Can you repeat? Sorry.
Yeah, that if you've seen, and I think we spoke about this a little bit yesterday, about the number of people who have wanted to learn languages online since the COVID crisis began. Yeah. And I remember you told me that you've been like the busiest you've ever been, right?
Well, my housemate started to call me here at home that I am a Christ trader because I was working more these 2 months, like not like others. Some people lost their job. But because of COVID, I found more students in this. Of course, I'm not saying that COVID is a good thing, COVID-19, but that's what happened. From my personal experience, I realized that many students joined NaTakallam, new students in this period. And at the same time, some students who stopped their sessions like a year ago or 2 years ago because of their conditions, they were busy, they're traveling. Now they found a chance to rejoin their session again. So yeah, I can say the answer is yes. It's more.
And where are they from? Like what countries usually, or what countries have you seen an uptick in during COVID? I'm just wondering what nationalities.
Well, I taught students from America, from the UK, from France, from Italy, from Israel, from India, from Australia, from Japan,
so from everywhere.
From China, from Germany, from some people who are originally from the Arab region, but were born in the Western country, and they want to learn their original language or the language of their families.
Interesting.
So they join NaTakallam. So I taught Palestinians and Jordanians who were born in America as well. As I told you, it's Spain. It's Turkey. It's very difficult to count actually here. But I think it's about 15 or 16 nationalities, as I think. Yeah.
And how has your experience been with students in the U.S. and meeting them virtually? I'm curious about that.
From which aspect, like exactly?
In regards to what are they like? What kind of questions do they ask? I mean, obviously, I'm wondering. Everyone is different, obviously, right? But what's it been like to teach people from the U.S.? Do they seem like they know quite a bit or not as much, or what kind of questions do they ask? What's their experience, their life experience? I'm just wondering if you get to talk a little bit about that.
Well, I do two teaching styles with NaTakallam. The first one is a one-to-one session, which is usually people who learn Arabic, or at least they have an Arabic background, or they studied Arabic and they want to practice more, to talk more, to become more fluent in Arabic. The second type is what we call it in NaTakallam K-12 sessions or guest speaker. So this kind of sessions, sometimes it's in Arabic, sometimes it's in English. It doesn't matter, because sometimes we meet students who study, for example, political science, or in the high school who want to know more about the Syrian issue or the Syrian situation. So it's not only language, it became like a culture or history session about the Middle East, or about the policy, or about the Middle Eastern situation today. So for these people, they ask usually about, most of them ask about my life, for example, the difference between my life before and after the war, and people who study political science or journalism, they ask more political questions about, like, for example, the Syrian-Russian relations, or the American interests in Syria, or the Kurds issue in Syria. So it's not just one question; there are many questions. But,
the Americans
for these people, yeah.
Do the Americans tend to ask different kinds of questions? I'm just curious about that. What your online interactions have been in regards to, maybe breaking down barriers and stigma associated with refugees.
Yeah, they do. They do. They ask actually, and a lot of them are curious to know more about refugees' life. And as I told you, the main goal of these sessions actually, we call it Refugees' Voices. Actually, this service or these sessions, it's something similar to what are we doing today here with you here. So I meet like a group of students in a university or a school, and I just give them the opportunity to ask about anything they want to know about Syria or about the Middle East, or about my life as a refugee, or about the refugees' issues or problems or difficulties or obstacles, anything about that. Okay, so yeah, there are many kinds of questions they can be. For those who learn Arabic, their questions are about the language, more vocabularies, more grammar sometimes, some terms, the pronunciation. So it's like a normal language sessions.
I'm wondering, have you, obviously, like during these conversations, we learn from each other, right? Obviously, they're trying to learn from you and about your experiences and the language. I'm wondering if you could talk about a little bit about what you've learned about some of your students, if you have. If there's been anything interesting that's kind of come up.
Of course. It's kind of cultural exchange, actually, because especially with those who learn Arabic, as I told you, most of our students, or I will not generalize, of my students from my experience, they have an Arabic background. They studied like a level or 2 levels, for example, and they just want to improve their language. So to do this, we choose topic to talk about here. And these topics, usually it's about the daily life, about our daily life, or when there is any news update or something happened in Syria and America, for example. So for example, yesterday I have a session, and I had a session and I was talking with my students about the demonstrations today in America. He was trying to explain to me in Arabic that thing. We choose a topic just to come, or like to motivate the student to talk more.
Right.
So my mission as a conversation partner is to encourage them, ask them questions, to lead or to this conversation, and to correct to them if there is any mistake. So when they talk about these topics, of course I learned. So I know more about the Syrian, about the American protestations today, or the strikes in America, or more. I've learned from my students in Israel. There is a big history, a long history between Syria and Israel, and long war history actually between the two countries there. But now we are a student and teacher. So when I tell them about Syria, when they tell me about Israel or Palestine, I know more. I discover new ideas, new thoughts inside this country. They changed actually a lot of my views when I met them in person, when I talked to them. And the most incredible feeling when you teach someone for about 2 or 3 years and then you meet him in person, which happened actually with some of my students.
Oh, wonderful.
Some of them visited me here in Italy, and I had a student from Israel, and she was living in London. Her name is Tali, and we were, I was teaching her from 2015, and last year, like 4 years later, which means she came to Italy, and she called me that she is in Italy, and we've met, and we organized a trip to Venice together with some friends. So when I teach someone for 4 years and then I meet him or her in person, and then he talked to me in Arabic face to face, I feel very proud. Actually, I feel so proud, because it means I did something. It's not like that. So yeah, I hope that answers.
No, that's amazing. And just to get a little bit off that topic, I'm wondering if you can talk a little. I mean, here in the U.S., there has been, during the COVID crisis, there has been a little bit of a backlash, mostly led by the Trump administration in regards to immigrants, saying that they're, because unemployment rates are high here now, obviously because of what's happening. But, where immigrants are kind of taking, are discriminated against, and people are saying, well, they're taking jobs from Americans, which it's not actually all that true. But I'm wondering if you've experienced or heard, similar rhetoric in Italy, during this crisis. I know that there was obviously some of that, anti-immigrant rhetoric before the pandemic, but I feel like it's grown worse here in the United States. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what it's like in Italy right now. Just
honestly, I didn't like experience this situation here, or I didn't hear about someone who went through this, but I believe that it's existed. If I don't hear about it, because it happens everywhere actually here. So I can't answer a lot about this because honestly I didn't go through this before, or with someone who faced this.
Okay, so it's not something that you've seen on a personal level.
No, but I think according to my to the surrounding atmosphere here and the people and how people think here, of course it happens. I guess it happens, from my knowledge of the society here. And
I'm wondering, how has your experience as a refugee maybe helped you cope with this pandemic? In the beginning, I talked a little bit about how we can learn from migrants, who are resilient and have been through a lot. Those skills have been put to play during this pandemic. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how your background and your experiences as a refugee, have quite a story, have kind of, if it's helped prepare you for something like this. If you could
it has prepared me to be alone.
Well, no, but seriously, no, really. I mean,
because I can give you an example.
Okay.
When I left Syria, I tried, and my family stayed in Syria, my parents. So I was not trying to call them a lot or, hello.
Hi, sorry.
Okay.
Do you want to say hello, Cora? Hi. Sorry.
Hi. What's your name?
My 5-year-old. My husband's taking her right now.
And then my greetings.
Okay, sorry.
So, no, it's
okay,
totally
go ahead,
okay.
please.
Yeah,
continue.
so I was telling that when I left Syria, and my parents now in France, they got asylum in France, but in 2013, 2014, they were still in Syria, and I was not able to contact them a lot because I didn't want to put them at risk because of my situation, as I told you, as a soldier who left the army. Same with my friends. So I was not contacting anyone inside Syria. I was not able to contact my friends, my relatives, my family in a way that I want. Being a refugee and working online actually gave me this opportunity to talk or to create new friendships through this small screen. So I say I found another friends there, and I used to be alone, but of course I don't visit friends. I don't go out in Lebanon, move in streets for reasons I explained before. But now or in that period, I was able to talk to new friends who are my students, some of them. Yeah. So joining them or talk with them every day. What happened in COVID now, we are 3 students living in this apartment. We rent this apartment. And when the lockdown started in Italy, they were visiting they are Italians, so they were visiting their family and in different provinces. So when the lockdown started, they got stuck there in their cities and they were not able to go back. So I spent 2 months of lockdown alone at home without any friend here. I just sometimes meet some people in the supermarket that I know, because it was the only place that we are able to go to during the lockdown. But I was talking to 6 or 7 friends online every day sometimes, or to a group of friends. And so I think that thing that I started in Lebanon prepared me to be alone here during these 2 months during the COVID-19 or the lockdown. So I found no issue. As I told you, I discovered that my normal life got lockdown. So.
Wow, yeah, I mean, it just goes to show, right? Yeah, I mean, you've built up this resilience and you've kind of gotten used to being alone somewhat. And I'm wondering if you could, sorry, if you could talk a little.
Fine, it's okay.
If you could talk a little bit about, you know, whether your family worries for you being alone, you know, in Italy during this time. You know, obviously family ties are really important in a lot of immigrant communities. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. You know, your relationship with them in regards to, you know, kind of, I don't know, I bet you put them at ease or try to put them at ease, but if you could talk a little bit about that.
I go to France to see them every 6 or 7 months, actually. I stay there for 1 week, sometimes for 10 days, and go back to Italy. So I will not say that I'm far from them or alone, but as I told you, it's, of course they were worried because the situation in Italy was a disaster, actually. It was, especially in March. In March, every day we got 9,000 new cases every day in Italy, and sometimes 900 deaths every day. So it was a disaster. It was really a horrible month. So of course they were worried about me. And but the lockdown started in late February or the beginning of March. But in January I was in France, so 2 months before. So I was there with them. So yeah, of course they got this fear that I'm in Italy, where there was a big problem due to COVID-19. But now the situation in Italy is better than in France.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
Yeah, I just call them every day, actually. During COVID-19, we're drinking tea together, have a conversation for half an hour using Skype. So yeah, that was our life, actually.
Huh. And I just want to remind people, you know, that you can still send some questions. We have about 2 minutes left, actually. Time has kind of gotten away from us, but I'd like for you to maybe, I'd like to end it with you guys. You know, can you talk a little bit about, or can you kind of give us a takeaway, like what people should remember about refugees? You know, what is something that, if there's one thing that people can take away from this webinar, what would it be?
Just believe in them. Just believe that they can do something. Like, don't deal with them as different people. Yeah. Just, they need someone who trusts them, actually. They don't need more. So that's it.
Right. Thank you so much. And I wanted to thank the French American Foundation for making this possible. And thank you so much for organizing this. I think this has been a really, really wonderful discussion. Thank you, Ghaith. I
want to thank them also. So thank you all.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Ghaith, for sharing your story with us. And I encourage, I believe that his story was shared. It's a print story you know, about him. And I encourage everyone to read it. And thank you so much for everything. And I'm sorry about my little visitor here, but she's been very clingy during this pandemic.
You're welcome.
But you're not.
Well, on behalf of all of us at the French American Foundation, thank you to both of you for joining us today and sharing your experiences and your insights into this very important topic. And an equal thanks to NaTakallam for partnering with us today through your Refugee Voices program. One quick note before we end is that our next webinar is this Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time about the world after COVID. So on that note, and thank you to everyone who joined us today in the audience. We hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
A pleasure to meet you. Bye-bye.